So one piece of news that we've had in the last few weeks is that Stephen Amell is going to be playing Casey Jones. Stephen Amell, of course, being the lead character in Arrow, playing the sort of titular hero, sort of titular because these, I guess, comic fans know him a little bit better as Green Arrow, but we don't need to get into all that.
Well, my image of Casey Jones is a guy in a hockey mask who beats up people, and that's pretty much it. So, in my defense though, I grew up in Norway, and we only had the first season of the original, not the original, but the cartoon, the 80 series. We only got the first season. I don't think Casey Jones is in it, so I wasn't really exposed to him. And I saw him for the first time in the movie, and I had no idea who the heck is this guy, since the cartoon was all I know.
I wish there was a lot to know about Casey Jones. I mean, there's been a couple different incarnations of him, but they're all more or less the same. I mean, we have a guy who's kind of like sort of what you call an almost ethnic New Yorker. I mean, he's Italian, but that has the line there has blurred so much between you know, a kind of classical Italian descendant and somebody who lives in New York, that you might as well just say, well, he's kind of an ethnic New Yorker. He's kind of got a brash sort of attitude. When you say that, you know, he's just kind of a guy in a hockey mask who beats up bad guys, that's actually pretty much the long and short of it. They've made attempts here and there to kind of introduce little situations that are going on in his life, you know, maybe who he knows or what's going on in his little corner of the world. But really, that's about the long and short of it. He's just a guy with a big heart who loves sports and loves beating up bad guys. I think my only point of reference for the live action Elias Koteas, or Cotes, I'm not sure how you even pronounce that, who played
Sounds
him in
Greek.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that also kind of plays into the New Yorker persona. And so he actually did a fairly good job. I wouldn't say he was probably as buff or as good looking as you would probably want. His youth showed through strongly enough that, you know, just having kind of the long hair and the big attitude really went a long way. But, you know, he was good enough in that movie. Stephen Amell is definitely going to be a different kind of Casey Jones. I mean, obviously he's not going to grow his hair long. But if you look at the image they released, they literally just put a hockey mask on him and he's just kind of standing there in his street clothes. The only really big wish I'd have is that they would go full tilt and put him in the wife beater. In the old cartoon series, that's how he was.
But I have one question though. How is Stephen Amell going to portray this ethnic New Yorker type? That's certainly not how I see him.
Yeah, Stephen Amell certainly doesn't match that. But really all it comes down to is having that New York accent, kind of having your head on a swivel, having a loud voice, mostly about the attitude. And can he do it? I am not going to hold my breath. I have not seen Stephen Amell really try accents too much. I guess there's a little bit of that on Arrow, but it's not anything that I have enough familiarity to declare, like, is this authentic? I don't know. I think he'll probably be all right either way.
So at worst, we might get a Californian Casey Jones.
Yeah, and that would not be the end of the world, but I can see a lot of really serious Ninja Turtles fans being displeased. So the other bit of news that's come out recently is we've kind of had an idea for a while that two of my favorite Turtles characters, Bebop and Rocksteady, were going to be in this movie. But the news came out this week that Bebop is going to be portrayed by Gary Anthony Williams, who I think more recently he's been the voice of Uncle Ruckus on the Boondocks, and I think that certainly paints a picture of the kind of obnoxiousness we can expect from Bebop. But you know, he's also got a long-spanning TV and film career, so we can't really boil him down to just that. But just getting into Rocksteady and Bebop themselves a little bit, so these are characters who haven't been necessarily part of the canon of all Ninja Turtle things that are related to Ninja Turtles. One place they've been particularly absent is the movies. But if you want to know about their origin, you have to go back to the 1987 Ninja Turtles cartoon, which is probably how most people are familiar with Ninja Turtles, at least people like our age.
Believe me, that is my first exposure, was the cartoon. That's to me, that is what was the Ninja Turtles, and that's kind of formed my impression. And that they have been absent from every single movie so far is really disappointing. thankfully that is now about to be rectified.
Yeah, I always loved them a lot because what you had was not only were they in the cartoon, but they were in all the video games, and they were just these really cool characters who were an easy, immediate point of reference. According to the 1987 cartoon, they were just street punks who were turned into mutants by Shredder to help fight the Ninja Turtles, and that's the theme we see a lot in that cartoon, is Shredder's pretty much just sitting around trying to think of ways to beat the Ninja Turtles. So Bebop was mixed with a wild boar, while Rocksteady was mixed with a rhinoceros, and I think this is about the long and short of it. What makes them the most exciting is just that they've got these really cool animals that they turned these people into amalgams of. One thing I just only found out about recently is that they've also appeared in the 2012 cartoon. This is the computer-generated one by Nickelodeon. They've appeared in that cartoon, but with very different origins. For example, all I had to read was that Rocksteady was a Russian mobster and arms dealer who worked with Shredder, and that's already pretty weird right there. But he ran afoul of Shredder. I guess Shredder was mad enough that he basically absorbed this Russian mobster's organization, and that at some point he turned into a mutant, and now he works for Shredder. So why not?
That sounds really lame to me, but...
So as far as the comics go, because I think that's where a lot of Ninja Turtle fans look to for what this franchise can really do with its potential, the beloved older comic series. So the only comics that they appeared in, at least in the early years, were the Archie comics. And that what's important there is that this is not really the main Ninja Turtles comic series. We're just talking about a comic that was based on the 1987 cartoon. And in fact, in some cases, I think they even might have had the same stories in both places. So really, it was just a kind of another place to pick up some of the same things.
Yeah, those were the comics that I was familiar with, because again, growing up in Norway, we only had the one season of the cartoon, and the comics that we got were the Archie comics, which featured the exact same storyline, at least to begin with, as the cartoon. Of course, they veered off in another direction, but then the art changed too, so people lost interest and it got cancelled.
In more recent years, they were introduced to the IDW comics. I think there's one story in particular that the internet has heard a lot about, which is that Bebop and Rocksteady actually supposedly killed Donatello. And that's, of course, very shocking to think of one of the Ninja Turtles getting killed. But in kind of typical comic book fashion, that didn't hold. And apparently what they actually did was they have Donatello's mind saved. Like, I don't know if you can like save it to a computer or what, but apparently he had this helmet that retained his mind, and Master Splinter was able to convince his spirit to come back to Earth. I'm sure that they're bringing the character back in any case. Donatello's not going to be dead. Obviously something that's going to blow people's minds, though, when they think of a character murdering a Ninja Turtle by using a hammer to smash their shell open. That's just vicious.
IDW Comics did one more thing also in recent years. They gave Bebop and Rocksteady an origin story, and that's actually quite a good read. And I really hope the producers of the new movie have read that comic and will base the characters on it. Because
what's the origin there? I don't think I've read that one.
Well, it's very similar to the one in the cartoon, that they are basically street thugs who have been kicked out of one gang after the other because they themselves are friends, but they're kind of incompetent buffoons, so no one wants to be with them for any extended period of time, and they're just looking for a new gang to hang out with. And that is how they get involved with the Shredder when he's starting out, and he has then tryouts where a bunch of gangbangers get together in a room, and he says, I have 2 openings. So the last 2 men standing get to work for the Shredder. And Bebop and Rocksteady, they're not the brightest, but even prior to the transformation, they were pretty big tough guys that you didn't want to mess with. They became the Shredder's new henchmen, and they started bumbling things up right away. It's quite a funny read, and I highly recommend it.
Some time ago, there's some concept art that came out of these 2, and I'm not sure if it's official or not. I mean, the word is that it's thought to be official, but you just never know. I mean, there's so many good artists out there who are happy to let the internet think what they will. But this concept art that they've leaked, this kind of CG images, looking at it, you can kind of see that that they're somewhat slavish to the design of the 1987 characters. And of course, this could change, because if it was as early concept art as it sounded like, there's lots of time to change things. But, you just kind of see them standing there. Bebop's got his vest still. He's kind of got the turtle shells on his shoulders, which was a big part of the design for the original character. Rocksteady's just kind of wearing his wife beater with various ammunition pieces, including some grenades, and kind of the goofy aviator hat, which we have not seen at all times for the character in the cartoon and the comics. But it's pretty in line. I would kind of like them to ditch the aviator cap.
I would
personally.
not. I would like them to keep it, because it's Rocksteady. I say keep the aviator cap.
We know that Bebop's going to be voiced by Gary Anthony Williams.
Yeah, I think he's going to be perfect. This is a working actor with quite an impressive resume, even if he's not an A-lister by any means. But this is a guy with some serious acting chops, and he's really, really good in terms of doing voice work. Where is he going to take it? Of course, he's most known for Mr. Uncle Ruckus, no relation. But that doesn't mean that Bebop is going to be anything like Uncle Ruckus. Even if I do hope we will get to see some of Ruckus raunchiness in there.
Yeah, I would hope to see a tinge of it, definitely in the poorly informed doofus arena. That would be just perfect.
That would be hilarious if that came out of Bebop.
Who would you like to see cast as Rocksteady?
Yeah, for me, there is one actor who stands out. He's maybe a little bit too old, but for voice work, he'd be perfect. And that is Tom Wilson, Biff Tannen from Back to the Future. I think he'd be perfect for it.
Yeah, and that kind of fits perfectly the image of somebody who's not too bright, but mean enough to try and get an edge over others, and to kind of have that big, dumb voice. I think especially if you just hand it up, that would be a really good option. I really hope they bring across some of these traits that we love so much about Rocksteady and Bebop. I have to ask myself, when I see these characters, there's an immediate recognition in my head, an instant yes reaction to these characters being in this movie, and I have to kind of stop and wonder, what is it that we love about them so much? So I think the first thing that comes to mind is it's kind of the Boba Fett thing, which is that these are just a couple of bad dudes who aren't really handcuffed by morality. They're free to act on their worst impulses.
Not only that, like Boba Fett, they look completely badass.
The character designs they've got are tremendous. They're just kind of mean and ornery. So thinking of a wild boar and the rhinoceros, those are great visuals.
Yeah, you do not underestimate wild boars. Those, if you see one, you run the other way. We luckily do not have them in Norway, but we've heard the horror stories from Sweden and Germany where they actually do have them in the wild.
And, of course, a rhinoceros needs no introduction. The size, the might, and that one of these things can just throw you with its horn. That's pretty awesome. And so mixing these with just a couple of street thugs, giving them this unreasonable amount of power, that's very cool and memorable. The other aspect of these characters that's very memorable is kind of their idiocy.
Yeah, that is fantastic, because they're like Beavis and Butthead, only with superpowers, which is hilarious.
That's a very scary thought. They're pretty much there so that you can delight in them failing.
But that's also a really interesting point, that no matter how badly they get screwed up, they eventually get their way back into Shredder's good graces. And I think that might have something to do with the fact that they are his only completely loyal henchmen. Good help is so hard to come by, and you see that in so many of the other cartoons from the period, like Megatron. Starscream was always plotting to take over his position, even directly in his face. And Skeletor, like all the others, they weren't quite like Starscream announcing their intention, but behind his back they all had their own plans and dreams and schemes to take over his position. But Bebop and Rocksteady, oh no, they had no desire and no aspirations to actually take over Shredder's position. They had no greater aspirations than being followers of a really cool gang. So they were loyal till the end. And there's something to be said for loyalty.
Definitely, in any event, seeing these characters come to the big screen is going to be childhood dream finally met by Hollywood.
This is the first time since 1991 when I'm actually excited about the Turtles movie.
For more great podcasts, news, and reviews, visit our site at midnightsedge.net and follow us on Twitter at midnightsedge. Also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/midnightsedge.